Hey guys, welcome to Sunday night and another episode of The Action Guys.
That's right, a very special episode brought to you guys. As you can see, we're not live today, and we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. Boom!
Yeah, that's right. It's brand new. It's here. We're super excited about it. It's the best and the worst. You guys might have heard us talk about this over the last month on our various shows. It's a brand new podcast. We have put our heart and soul into this, and this is the first episode here for you right now.
Now, while this is going to be on video for you guys to actually see what we're doing, every single episode we're going to do is going to be on video, but most importantly, down below in the description, if you guys can follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, not only is that the best way to follow along with the podcast, but it's also the first place that anything's going to be dropping. And tonight, we are dropping both of our first two episodes, the best and the worst of Ryan Gosling and the best and the worst martial artists in film.
It was a doozy of an episode to record. Steven Seagal was involved.
He definitely was, and so were all six of his chins. So guys, we really hope you enjoy the first episode of the best and the worst in lieu of the Action Guys, and we'll be back to our regularly programmed schedule next week. Big time salute! Whether he's doing the Dirty Dancing lift with 17 abs on display, saving jazz in Los Angeles, or stomping someone to death in an elevator, there's no question Ryan Gosling has made his mark on Hollywood in a major way over the last 2 decades.
Ryan Gosling.
Today, we celebrate the 10-year anniversary of one of the absolute coolest movies ever made, Drive. Is it Gosling's best movie? And if it in fact is, what's his worst? Join us today to figure it out. This is the best and the worst of Ryan Gosling.
I drive.
What is up, cinephiles and Gosling stands alike? Today is your day because this is the best and the worst of Ryan Gosling. I'm Andrew Ghai. Joining me as always is my good friend Ben Bateman. And why are we here? What do we do on this show? Well, you and I have loved to talk about movies for years, and we're going to figure out the best and the worst of any said topic. And today, as you guys probably figured out in the intro, is Ryan Gosling. And the reason for this is because it's been the 10-year anniversary of Drive like a week ago. And I'm just going to hop into it.
Hey guys, we're going to be back to full-scale Gosling talk in just a second. We just wanted to take a minute to thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Best and the Worst. We're a brand new podcast, and if you want to support what we're doing, there's a couple key ways to do it. Number one, leave us a review on the podcast app on Apple. It's such an important piece of growing your podcast. It's what the metrics all look for. It's interaction. While you're at it, number two, leave us a rating. Obviously, 5 stars would be preferable, but if you're listening to this and you have a strong opinion, leave that anyway. The more interaction with you guys that we can get on there, the better. And finally, hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, go and find it on audio and hit that subscribe. The second episode is up right now on audio. It's the best and the worst martial artists in film of all time. It's exclusively on audio for the first week. So if you like this and you want to check out the second episode, be sure to go subscribe. Otherwise, thanks for supporting, guys, and let's get back to the show.
What's the first thing that you think of when you think of Drive?
For me, it's got to be the vibe. I think it's created by the music. So probably I would tell you that it's the music. It's Kavinsky, Night Call. It's A Real Hero. Like, the way that stuff made me feel when I was 23 years old and very cool was even cooler than that feeling that Drive brought out. I think it shaped the way a lot of people felt about, I don't know, like electronic music in that era, like the color scheme. It's LA. Like, there just was a lot about living here when that came out.
Yeah.
It was like, this is the cool part of LA. I'm not part of the underground driving scene, but like.
So we by that time, I guess 10 years ago, you and I had both been in LA for like a handful of years. So it was one of the things that I think was really cool for me was like just looking around and seeing like the parts of the city, the street signs, like looking at the buildings and all that. But like, Drive was awesome. Like, it was such a badass movie, and it was probably the first time that a lot of people saw that Gosling could be a badass, right? Like, had he really done that before this moment?
No, not really. I think there were probably moments in his career early on where you get to see him do things that seem cool. But honestly, when I think about like a lot of the Gosling roles, he's skinny and he's like, I mean, he's a linebacker, but he's real skinny, or he's like a teacher and he's really skinny. Like,
Yeah.
He just never felt like he had any like weight to him. Like, it didn't feel like he was a tough guy almost at all.
He was kind of just always like a pretty boy or a sweetheart or like a love interest. And like, Drive, for me, like, you talk about the music. For me, it was like the moment that I felt, because I'd been in love with Gosling for a while up to this point. Like, The Notebook changed my life, you know?
But that's actually the first thing Drew said to me when we met.
I was like, it's a 10-year anniversary of Drive? Perfect. I can talk about The Notebook. But for me, it was kind of the moment where I was like, oh, yeah, this is like that Hollywood leading man, like, badass thing. Because now you can be the heartthrob. Now you can be kind of like, you know, you mentioned in Remember the Titans, like, he's kind of just like a pretty boy. He's kind of a sweet guy. Like, you like him. You know, you feel like you want your son to be friends with him or something like that. But in Drive, it was like he turned into a total badass. And so you said the thing was music. For me, it was the fact that it was like, all right, I think this is kind of the... not even a mainstream movie, right? Yeah. It wasn't even really that mainstream when it came out. It felt like it was only after maybe the music caught on and the fact that like Cranston was in it. Yeah. And, you know, like, because this movie was not a gigantic thing when it came out, but it did feel like it made everyone pay attention.
Well, interestingly enough, because when I think about the experience of this movie, I don't remember this movie hitting theaters and everyone talking about it.
I don't think I saw it in theaters.
I definitely didn't. What I think happened, what you just said a second ago, is correct, which is the soundtrack caught on, and this became, over the course of the next year, did you see Drive? Because, you know, we'll get into this in a bit, the period of his career, this is an explosive period in Ryan Gosling's career. Yeah. And so we all started to talk about him in a different way, and I think that this movie is at the center of it, because as much as the other stuff that he's in around this time is interesting, this is the coolest movie by far. It is the coolest thing.
Yeah. Okay. So you and I, when we used to do the show Action Movie Anatomy, we talked, like, one of the games we played on that show was like career defining role. Yeah. And that, I mean, I feel like it kind of speaks for itself, but like, is this Gosling's career defining role? Do you think when people look back at Ryan Gosling, this is the movie that pops in their head? Because I don't really think it is, honestly.
No, I definitely don't think it is. I think a career defining role for some actors or actresses, it's an easier thing to pinpoint because it feels like it's at the center of a franchise, or it feels like they only had one. Like when you look back at certain people's careers, it's hard to not feel like they had that one thing that was their movie, you know? Like,
and it can come late in a career, right? When you think about someone like Johnny Depp, right? Like Jack Sparrow feels like his career-defining role now, even though he had done so much before and so much after, whereas Gosling, maybe because of the movies he's picked, it's like, well, is it The Notebook? Is it La La Land? Is it him in The Big Short? Is it Drive? And I don't think it's Drive. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't talk about this movie unless they're kind of prompted to talk about it.
Drive is the hipster pick for the best Ryan Gosling movie. It's like if you want to like make a hard point that people are going to be like, well, but what about these other 5 movies? Right. You pick Drive. I feel like that's the truth.
And people are like, oh, good pick, man. Good pick.
Yeah, right.
This Ryan Gosling party is dope.
Yeah, it's usually the line I drop at most Ryan Gosling parties, though. I got a couple moves.
You went to a lot of cool parties back in the day.
I did go to a lot of cool parties.
So speaking of Drive, like, since this show is not about Drive, that is what prompted us to want to talk about Ryan Gosling, because I really do think he's had a fascinating career. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But Drive itself, you and I both love.
Oh my God.
Is there a moment in Drive that you can always pinpoint or think about? Like when someone says Drive, yeah, the music pops in your head, but like when you think about the scenes in the movie, was there like the sweetest scene? What's the best scene from Drive for you?
For me, the scene in Drive that will always get me more than any other scene, it's literally the overhead shot of the city with Night Call playing. And it's just something about when I talk about the vibe. I mean, that's my number one memory of this movie, because there's some tough scenes, there's some badass kills, there's some great drama. There's a lot of things in this movie I really like. But when I just remember seeing that
it's just like sexy.
Yeah,
like
dude.
It makes you feel it. We're so old. We're like, it just makes me feel young. It makes me feel cool. But it's true. Like this movie just makes you feel kind of like a badass when you're watching it.
Yeah, I did not realize this podcast was going to make me feel so old.
Yeah, well, when it starts with a 10-year anniversary for a movie that I think, gun to my head, I would have said came out like 5 or 6 years ago, not a good start. For me, it's weird because, you know, if I had to talk a Gosling moment, it might be like the scene in the hotel. Yeah. Because that's the first moment in the movie where you're like, oh, damn, like he's that guy. Like we knew he could drive, we knew he took himself seriously, but like there's a reason no one messes with Ryan Gosling. But actually, it's the moment that Albert Brooks kills Bryan Cranston. I don't know why, but it's always stuck in my head. It's so simple. It's so ruthless. Yeah. It's unstoppable. It's so inevitable once it happens, right? Like it's just a handshake to a wrist slit with the razor, And that's it.
Don't worry. Don't worry. That's it. It's done. There's no pain. It's over. It's over.
And it's like the simplicity of that scene, I think, is kind of echoed throughout the movie because, like, they really don't do anything super flashy in this movie. Even the cars that he drives in this movie, it's a Malibu, which makes sense because you don't want to call attention to yourself. Whereas, like, in Fast and Furious, they drive like Lamborghinis, Ferraris, like Chargers from the 60s, like things like that.
It's arguable that my favorite part about this movie is his jacket. But it just occurred to me, the Scorpion, it's like such a sweet jacket. It's like,
is it the Shatner mask that he's wearing? Is that what it is? Is it like the Michael Myers mask before it's been painted? Is that
I'm not sure what the mask is. I always
creepy.
his outfit, like his driving gloves and the jacket, like it's just the coolest thing.
And there's a lot of ruthless stuff that happens in this movie. Like not just the wrist slit, but there's like the stabbing in the neck with the knife, and then like the moment with the hammer. Like they really go for it.
Yeah.
But I think, and honestly, when we were, again, I'm going to mention this because we have other shows that we do. When we talk to people about Ryan Gosling, Drive actually kind of fell by the wayside in the conversation. So another thing that we want to do here on The Best and the Worst is kind of take the movie at hand and segue it into our conversation about Gosling. And I think what you and I had figured out when we sat down and kind of talked about Ryan Gosling, his career, and this movie is that he really is the sweetest bad boy that has ever been on the silver screen. Like, can you think of anyone else that has kind of rivaled him in this?
Rob Lowe.
You said that before in pre-production. You're saying it again now. No, it's not Rob Lowe.
Have you seen Tommy Boy?
I was going to say, he's the weird, creepy brother in Tommy Boy.
No, I think because to be able to hold the mantle you're talking about, I think that there's a lot of different characteristics. You have to have a level of fame that is really big, right? You've got to have a level of sex appeal that where you're not like classically square jaw Baywatch guy. You're like more interesting. You're like sexier than
Zac Efron has a look that is like more mainstream than Ryan Gosling's. And then conversely, we were also talking about someone like Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
But like when I watched This Means War,
you watched that
it
movie?
was a very good 2 hours. Chris Pine was way more charming, way more charismatic, even though I love Tom Hardy. And he's like a true bad boy.
Yeah.
Right? And then you look at another guy that kind of like what we're talking about, and rest in peace, Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't really ever the heartthrob in the way that Gosling was, and that was because of choice. Like, he always wanted to play against type. And then you and I went way back in time, and we talked about like James Dean.
Yeah, because I think that like James Dean, or there are certain portrayals in Brando's career early on, I think, before he gets more intense. Like, there's a lot of people who have sort of held this moniker, but I think the thing that is so interesting about Gosling, I can't find a single Ryan Gosling role in my head, not a single one, where I actually don't look at him and feel like, yeah, he's kind of a sweetheart.
Right? Like,
everyone.
Even in Murder by Numbers, which is a great film.
One of your favorite films.
One of my favorite films. He's like even the good bad guy. Like, I'm pretty sure he's the one that like gets betrayed out of the two bad guys at the end of the movie. And even in that moment, you're like, oh, poor Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, that being said, the sweetest bad boy that's ever graced the screen, you said something a moment ago that was interesting, is like, you talked about Brando.
Yeah.
So Gosling is Canadian, right?
Yeah.
He was on the Disney Channel, and he actually changed his voice to not sound Canadian. He like sculpted his voice around what Marlon Brando sounds like, which is why in every movie he kind of like talks like this.
Well, he has such a weird voice anyway, because he'll do odd stuff with it. Like in Gangster Squad, he's really high.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And he's a little squeaky in Nice Guys too. But like the thing you're talking about, that's really interesting, because like he has that thing where it sounds like an accent, where he's like, "Hey Mia, really wearing that dress like you're doing it a favor," and you're like,
"What did you just say?"
Yeah, this Calvinist. But like, I feel like I always have wondered when he has that accent. I was like, just why does he sound like that?
I've always thought the same thing.
Oh, Hannah, you're really wearing that dress like you're doing it a favor.
Oh, God.
That's a line. Me sitting over there for the past 2 hours not being able to take my eyes off of you is a fact.
if you guys don't know who Ryan Gosling is, I mean, he's basically, at this point, he's 31 years old. He used to be on the Disney Channel, but then he took these really weird turns in his career, and which is probably why he's as famous as he is. He went from being on the Disney Channel to being a neo-Nazi, to being addicted to heroin, to being in love with the blow-up doll, and then, as you guys just saw in the intro, to stomping someone's brains out in an elevator. So at this time, when Drive came out, he was 31. Later that year, he starts dating Eva Mendes, who is the love of his life. They end up having 2 kids. Like we said, he's from Canada. His first starring role in a movie was The Believer, which is where he played a Jewish neo-Nazi. And at this time, he had just come off of a 3-year hiatus from acting. And when you and I were talking about this, we had 2 radically different ideas of who Ryan Gosling was in 2011.
I think it really comes down to one key factor, and that's you're in the camp that saw The Notebook, or you're in the camp that didn't see The Notebook.
Yep.
Because I remember when Lazy Sunday came out, the SNL sketch with Sandberg and Chris Parnell, and Lazy, what I'm talking about, the Chronicle What Kills of Narnia.
Yeah.
And they make the reference in that sketch more than McAdams Loves Gosling. They show like a clip of it on the screen, and I understood the reference because I knew the movie, and I know that in Just Friends they go see The Notebook. It was a big deal, but it was a romance. And if you didn't watch The Notebook, which I didn't because at the time, 2004, I think it was, I just didn't care. It wasn't a movie that I wanted to watch. And all these years passed, and your idea, because you watched it, of Gosling from then on was this person that you were really interested in. I just didn't know. He was a guy that was in stuff that I would see on box covers every once in a while, but I had no attachment to the guy at all.
You didn't know if he was going to be a superstar. You didn't know if it'd be the last time you heard of him. And he just took a 3-year hiatus from acting, and it was after he did these movies that were very interesting. He does Half Nelson, which is the heroin-addicted teacher. He does Fracture with him and Hopkins, which is
sweet.
Kind of like a, what is it, like a political thriller, really?
It's like a classic, just spy, not spy, but just a thriller.
Yeah. And then the last one is Lars and the Real Girl, which is where he is in love with this, not blow-up doll, but it's a life-size doll.
Yeah.
They're kind of odd choices for a dude coming off of Remember the Titans earlier in the 2000s, and then of course, we just talked about, the revolutionary Notebook. It was a true movement. So I was obsessed with Gosling at this time. I loved him. I watched every single one of these movies when they came out, not in theaters, but shortly thereafter. He takes a 3-year hiatus. He's playing in this band called Dead Man's Bones.
Bones, right? Yeah.
And you said you listened to some of their music?
Well, yeah, because back in 2016, I think it was, towards the end of the year, the La La Land premiere, I was doing a lot more carpets at the time, and so I was going to interview Gosling. I had never met him before, and I was like, this will be really cool, because I'm formerly, at the time, a musician, back to being a musician really now, but right. I was like, if I understand something about one of his passions, this will be a cool question. And I listened, and it was fine.
It was very okay.
It was cool. I mean, it wasn't bad music, but I didn't listen and go wow, he really missed his calling. This is so much better than his acting career.
Which is funny because you go and you look at his acting career, and he's definitely found moments to sing, whether it's in Blue Valentine or obviously La La Land. So 2007, he does Lars and the Real Girl. He comes back in 2010. He does All the Good Things, Blue Valentine, Crazy Stupid Love, and Drive. Back to back to back to back in 2010, 2011. Was this the moment where you started to really pay attention? This guy is actually a superstar.
Well, because here's what happened. I distinctly remember this. So I'm Jewish, both sides of my family. Mm-hmm. I saw The Believer before I saw almost anything else he was in. In fact,
a gnarly movie.
It is. It's really intense. He's a neo-Nazi, but he's Jewish. It's got Billy Zane, and there's some incest kind of stuff going on.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah. It's a pretty fucked up movie. But you can tell that Ryan Gosling was rebelling against his Mickey Mouse Club type from a very young age, because he decides to do that movie, and that's 2001 probably,
something like
so
that.
He's in his early 20s. He wants to do that kind of thing, and it's the same thing you just talked about with touring for 3 years and leaving acting to go do something else. He just didn't want to be a heartthrob star. That wasn't his idea of success in Hollywood, very clearly. Lars and the Real Girl, Half Nelson, these are choices that are really specific. And so I think when Drive came out,
he's been nominated for an Oscar. Yeah. He's in his early 30s. He is dating a superstar, in Eva Mendes. It feels like this is probably his moment to skyrocket, right?
I think my real memory of Gosling and becoming more aware of him, or being more familiarized with him, was actually not Drive. It was Crazy Stupid Love, because that was such a popular movie. So many people saw that movie.
So many people are Julianne Moore was having a good moment. Steve Carell was having the biggest of moments that you can almost have.
David Lindhagen.
Yeah. Kevin Bacon's in there, which is Kevin Bacon's one of those interesting names that if you throw in a movie, there's this really large group of people that will just go see it because they love Kevin Bacon. Like, he's one of those guys from the 80s and 90s. So this is where we're actually going to get into the best and the worst. You guys are probably wondering, like, why is this called the best and the worst? You guys are just talking about Ryan Gosling. It's because we wanted to give you some context before we actually break down what's the best Gosling film and what's the worst Gosling film. So this is where you guys are going to get involved. According to the Tomato Meter, the best movies that he's ever done are Drive, La La Land, and The Nice Guys. And the worst movies he's ever done are Stay, Murder by Numbers, and Gangster Squad. So this is where we need you guys to get involved. Let us know in the comments section what you think we're going to pick are the best and the worst of Ryan Gosling's movies. And if you guys pick, we'll shout you out next week on the show. And the way that we're going to do that, Ben, we came up with we're a bit of scientists when it comes to film.
Yeah, we've been in the lab all day.
So talk us through these categories that we kind of chose. These are the things that we think are maybe the most important when determining. Because, like, look, if we wanted to just tell you the best movie, we would just go to IMDb, we'd go to Rotten Tomatoes, we'd get an aggregate score of the top 3, we'd average it out and be like, it's the best because of this score.
Right.
But, like, you and I, we have a different way of approaching this.
Yeah, I mean, I think movies, when you try to figure out, like, you know, what is good, what is bad, people just lean on the Tomato Meter and the IMDb score so often.
Yeah.
And I get it. You know, it's like, you know, regression to the mean. It is the most common form of rating a movie. But we decided to kind of get away from that a bit. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about 3 different key factors. The first one, rewatchability. Now, this is like a factor that I feel like for all of us, this is your favorite 10 movies. They have to hit this category because if they don't, there's no way they make your top 10.
Right. I mean, you and I, like, my favorite movie of all time, in quotes, is Gladiator. Yours in all time, in quotes, is Point Break. We both love Warrior. I know that Gladiator is not the best movie ever made.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love that movie to death. I will rewatch it 10 times out of 10. How often do I want to rewatch it? Is it like once a year? Is it once a month? Is it once a week? Is it once a lifetime? Like, those are things that come into play with rewatchability. The other thing that we kind of stumbled upon was approachability.
Yeah.
Right? Like, can I show this to anyone? I grew up in a very religious family. I have people that don't like to watch R-rated movies. I have people that don't like to watch violent movies. Or I have people like my mother, who's Korean first generation, that, like, she just doesn't get my type of comedy. So you have to take in all these different demographics and go, what is truly the most approachable film in this guy's filmography or in this topic's filmography? And then the last one, which I think was really great that you brought up, was visibility.
Yeah, when you watch a movie, guys, that you watch and you love for the first time, you want to go talk to your friends about it.
Yeah.
So you're like, if you're watching Ryan Gosling's filmography and you're like, I just came across Half Nelson. He's this heroin-addicted teacher. It's kind of an indie. Can you believe Anthony Mackie was in it? And he was nominated for an Oscar. And you go to your local job at Starbucks, you talk to the other baristas, and you're like,
what is
have
this
you
world
seen,
you've created?
Let me finish. And you're like, have you seen Half Nelson? They're going to look at you and just be like, what are you talking about?
You talking about that weird Ryan Gosling movie where he's addicted to heroin? He's a teacher?
Yeah.
And you're like, yes! Yes, man!
They're like, I was fucking with you, actually. I don't know what that movie is.
Or it's like when someone's like, hey, man, you want to come over and watch Requiem for a Dream?
Yeah.
And you're like,
right.
I like that movie.
So I feel like there's a big key component, which is that if you're going to talk about the best movie in any actor or director's career, which is what we're going to go do on the show, it has to be some movie that is pretty well known. Because otherwise you're just not going to be able to qualify that as like that top level. I mean, those Ryan Gosling parties that I go to frequently, you know, like
don't go to these parties.
but I do think that you could have the most hipster pick of all hipster picks on this list of Ryan Gosling movies. I mean, you could pick freaking Song to Song.
Hipsters are not going to like our show now.
No, yeah. You could pick Song to Song. It's a Terrence Malick movie, and it's cool, and it's music related, but like no one saw that movie. Like, it's a cool movie. It's not great. No one saw it. If you try to claim that is the best Ryan Gosling movie, good luck finding someone to talk to about it.
Right. Like, I mean, I love Gosling, and I've never seen it.
Yeah.
It's just one that I miss. So we got rewatchability, approachability, visibility, and the fourth factor we're going to actually tell you after we break down our picks of rewatch, approach, and visibility. And this is, again, where you guys need to come in. Let us know down below in the comments. Now you know the top 3 and bottom 3. You know, based off of scores on Rotten Tomatoes, and now you know how we're going to gauge them. So while you might think Blue Valentine is his best performance or Half Nelson is his best performance, it's probably not going to win just because of the things that we just talked about with approachability and rewatchability. Like, I loved Half Nelson. I haven't watched it since the first time I watched it over 10 years ago.
I saw it like 2 years ago, I think, for the first time. But it was an interesting movie. So yeah, getting into rewatchability, Drew and I have both decided, and this was an exhaustive process because we both really like Gosling a lot.
I really do, yeah.
And like, there's a ton of movies that I wanted to qualify for all of these categories. But we're gonna start with his most rewatchable movie in the best category. Because trust me, we're gonna get to the worst in just a second.
We absolutely are. And so I actually think that the most rewatchable film for me, and it's crazy because it's a more recent one, is The Nice Guys.
It's so good.
So funny. And I think that was the one thing that I'd kind of missed in Gosling's career, at least up to this point, was the fact that, like, I could see that he had good timing. I could see he was like a smart actor. I enjoyed watching him do all the things, but like never ever had he made me like laugh out loud regularly in a film. And obviously this is a Shane Black movie. It's got all those Shane Blackisms in there. I love Russell Crowe. You guys heard me talk about Gladiator a second ago. But for me, rewatchability, as I've gotten older, this is the movie I watch the most in his entire catalog.
You know, it's interesting because I want to say the same thing as you. And The Nice Guys actually is the movie of his that I have seen the most time. So it almost makes me feel like I'm just going to agree with you outright. But what I've realized as I have talked to more people about The Nice Guys, and one of our close friends actually who's been on this channel before with us, he produced this movie.
Yeah.
We've had long conversations with Ethan about this movie, and like, it's a crime that more people did not watch The Nice Guys.
And I would totally be down for a sequel.
Oh
I don't know what it would look like. I don't care how dumb it would be, who wrote it, who directed it, any of it. Even if it wasn't Shane Black, as long as it was Gosling and Crowe on screen again, I want to see that.
What I have noticed about The Nice Guys is when I talk about that movie, men love it, women like it. It's not as universally loved as like a general movie. It's something I've noticed often that I'm like, I mean, I guess it makes sense. I'm a dude. I like this Shane Black dude-driven movie.
He's a bro writer. Like
Totally.
it's like a thing. Again, if you like look up Shane Blackisms on Google, you will see hundreds of examples through his entire career of what we're talking about.
So the other movie that is close, and it's almost on the same level for me, it's Crazy Stupid Love.
Okay.
Because, like, look, I love them equally. I've seen Nice Guys more times, but I only kind of more recently reinvested in Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah, you've watched it a lot in the last few months.
These Gosling parties, but like it's loved by kind of everyone is like what I've realized, and so I think I would honestly put them like 51-49 kind of a thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna choose Crazy Stupid Love because my guess is that in 10 more years I will still be watching Crazy Stupid Love more often than Nice Guys. I could be wrong.
It's like you could show it to anyone. You could show it to your family. You could watch it on a first date. You could watch it with your buddy. You'd still laugh your ass off. It's PG-13. And like, I know this is like kind of an archaic way of me looking at films.
Yeah.
But I do truly believe there's a reason why studios always press for PG-13 over rated R in movies that don't have to be rated R. The Nice Guys had to be rated R. Crazy Stupid Love could have been, but it wasn't. And I think that is a really great choice for the best. What about the worst?
The most rewatchable,
the least rewatchable movie.
You know, for me, well, do you want to go first? I just spoke.
Yeah, okay. So I'm scared to say this out loud. I really like this movie a lot, and I remember watching it in theaters and just being like blown away, mesmerized. Denis Villeneuve, Ana de Armas.
Oh my god.
Ryan Gosling.
You're gonna
Harrison Ford.
This is like some people listening to this favorite movie.
We've lost the hipsters. We've lost all the fans of Blade Runner 2049 because, look, I loved this movie. I truly enjoyed it. I thought Jared Leto was awesome in it. All of the things about this movie, I thought Gosling was like very much kind of like an ode to who he was in Drive, but like a little more, like just he spoke more. He was more engaging, more interesting. But since I saw it in theaters, I've turned it on one time. I haven't finished it. Literally every other movie that we're going to discuss that I have watched, even Murder by Numbers, I have watched more than Blade Runner 2049. Blue Valentine I've watched exponentially more than Blade Runner 2049. And it's crazy to me because it's not that I don't like it. It's not that I don't appreciate it.
I think it's interesting you say that because I have only seen this movie one time.
In theaters,
I saw it
right?
in theaters. And I thought it was one of the most magnificent cinematic experiences I'd ever seen.
This is what I'm talking about.
It like I was like, this is going to be a Best Picture candidate. Like, this is beautiful. Denis did incredible work. I loved all the performances. I mean, I was a big fan of this movie, but I've never gone back to rewatch. And I wonder why. It's possible that the next time I go to rewatch, actually, funny sidebar, one of my good buddies who recently got into our old show, Action Movie Anatomy, decided he was going to watch Blade Runner. he was like,
we didn't do an episode on it, did we? Or we did?
We did.
We did, yeah.
He was going to watch Blade Runner, and he was excited to watch it. And so he calls me, and he's like, dude, I watched Blade Runner, and I can't even tell you how current it feels and how just, like, it's just incredible. It, like, I can't believe they did such amazing things. And I was like, wow. I was like, and I like Blade Runner, but, you know, I find it to be a little boring. I was like, but I'm glad you really like it. And he was like, oh, God. He's like, you know, I didn't realize Jared Leto was so old. And I was like, oh, you watched 2049 by accident, didn't you? And he's like, no. And I was like, well, he's definitely not in the original. So, and he was like,
He thought you were talking about the original? He thought it was the original?
He thought that 1982's Blade Runner was like,
He should be hosting this show.
that amazing looking. And it was like, it was a moment of realization for him. But then afterwards he watched the original. He was like, you're wrong. It's really good. So,
I mean, look, so Blade Runner 2049, I wonder also if I go and rewatch it, if I'll want to watch it more.
Yeah.
But like I said, I turned it on and I turned it off at like one of the most beautiful parts where it's like that super pink like place that he goes to, like a valley or something. I can't remember. It was like visually stunning. But anyway, that's my pick. And it's, again, I apologize to the Blade Runner 2049 fans out there, but that's my honest pick.
So my pick, and this one is one that I know you'll relate to. 2016, when I saw
Really?
this film.
You're going to go there
Yeah.
already? You're just telling us what it is by the year.
Yeah, La La Land. Wow. So the reason is because I remember watching this film and like seeing it at the premiere, and like there's a lot of adrenaline. Like you come off the interviews, you get in there to watch it, you're seeing the movie, and like I've lived in LA for 12 years. I've been in multiple facets of entertainment, but ultimately, just like the movie says, just like you, I'm a dreamer. Like I have my idea of what I want my creative life to be. I work really hard at it, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished. And I've also had lost love a couple times since I've been here. And the reality of that memory of like what could have been love is so hard to stomach that when I thought about La La Land for like the 6 months after I watched it, I was like, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. I can't bring myself to watch it again. And I've never been able to go back to rewatch it because it brought me a kind of sadness. Like Star is Born, Bradley Cooper here, La La Land here. Like it like ruined me.
I like wept like openly. I went and saw it with my family when I was visiting them, and it crushed me.
Yeah.
It really did. But I also, there's a part of me that kind of loves that. Like I said, I like Blue Valentine isn't on here, and that movie crushes me every time I watch it. I'm a little shocked you pick La La Land, but I can't really speak. I just said Blade Runner 2049. So, all right. So those are our most rewatchable, Nice Guys and Crazy Stupid Love. Our least rewatchable are Blade Runner 2049 and La La Land. And again, I understand where you're coming from with La La Land. I think maybe just like, what is it? Was it the masochist in me? Is that the one where you like? Yeah.
Hurt yourself?
There's just something about it. Like I like that it makes me feel the way that it does, which is like very sad.
Yeah.
So let's get to the next category, which is approachability. Approachability, this is this is the movie you can show anybody. I'm going to start off first because it's The Notebook. This is the movie that I started watching in high school. I loved it. I watched it with my first love. I remember showing it to my mom and my sisters. They were all sitting on the couch like crying, watching it. They loved it. If you want to see love, if you want to see that on film that makes you feel like love is real and that it can accomplish and triumph anything in Ryan Gosling's filmography, 100%, it's The Notebook. And like you said, even though you hadn't seen it, they could do SNL skits about it and you knew exactly what they were talking about.
It was a big moment. It was a cultural moment when this movie came out, and it didn't. What's funny about The Notebook, and I think when you and I spoke about this when we were prepping this episode, it has an enormous gap between the critical score and the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like 30 or 40%. It's somewhere in the 40s or 50s versus like the 80s by the audience. There was something about this Nicholas Sparks film when it came out, and the reaction from critics was, this is schlocky, but audiences were like, you're wrong. This makes me feel.
Yeah.
And as time has gone on, I think it peaked a few years ago, to be honest. I actually think it's started to fade a bit, but it's one of the most recognizable romantic films or love stories in our lifetime.
And like there's something about watching young love that makes you feel young. It makes you feel in love. It makes you feel happy. And then like the sad/happy ending, it's like pretty satisfying. So like I feel like if I wanted to show someone a Ryan Gosling movie that I knew almost everyone would identify with, other than I guess maybe if it was just like you and me hanging out, do you want to turn on The Notebook? That's the one for me. I think the approachability for me is just The Notebook.
Yeah, my choice for the most approachable one, it's going to surprise you guys. So it's a movie that, Gosling is featured in for sure. He's a significant part of the movie, but he's not the star of the movie. He definitely has sex appeal in the movie.
Okay.
And it's, large cast, a lot of performances I like. It's Crazy Stupid Love. Again, I'm going 2 for 2.
Wow.
And honestly, I almost pivoted off of this movie for my rewatchable category. Like I said, I was 51-49 for Nice Guys. But for this category, to me, it's a slam dunk. It is
Really?
far and away the most. This is like the one that I feel like you could show to anyone, because there's one thing: romance movies, action movies, dramas, whatever. When you combine a really, really good comedy with a really good romance,
Yeah. Rom-com is like that. It like transcends. Like you can always turn on a good rom-com or mention one, and everyone gets excited about it if it's a good one. Like
it's just the reason Julia Roberts is famous is because she just fit well into a genre that is like universally loved. And the funny thing is, I didn't like it when I was a teen. As I've gotten older, I love a good rom-com now. Like a good rom-com
always loved them.
speaks to me. So this movie to me, I think it was recently you and I watched this, and I was like struck by the Steve Carell speech that he gives at the end when he interrupts his son. And he says that thing where he's just like, I met my soulmate when I was, 16 years old, and he tells the story. I don't know if it's going to work out.
I met my soulmate when I was 15 years old, and I have loved her every minute of every day since I first bought her that mint chocolate chip cone.
It's such a good rom-com scene that I was just like, how do you not like this movie?
it has so much heart, and it is very funny. It has the sex appeal, and I think they do a really good job in that movie too of like bearing the lead? Is that what they say when there's the big twist at the end? Too.
Huge.
You
Oh
don't
my
even- You don't
God.
even think about it because you don't even care about it. You care about so much more about these two couples and their investment in their relationships. That's really interesting that you're going to go back to back. But I do think that there is something about because that's the other thing about The Notebook that you can't do is like I said, if I'm like, dude, you want to come over and watch The Notebook? It feels a little different than being like, let's watch Crazy Stupid Love.
True story. When we met, we did that, but
We did. I mean, of course we did. I love it. So what's the worst? What's the worst then?
Yeah, I guess the worst one, the least approachable for me. I'm gonna double down here and go twice in a row. This is a movie that I watched when I was very young. It's The Believer. It's a horribly dark film, as I mentioned, about a Jewish neo-Nazi, Billy Zane, and some incest. And it is a very upsetting movie to watch.
And it's rated really well. It's in the 80s on both sides on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's good. It has some a pretty interesting ending, but I have no interest in rewatching this, and I don't have an interest in showing this. I'm trying to think in what situation. A new friend, a new girlfriend, a family member. Who would I show this movie to? I cannot think of anyone that I would show this movie to, being like, you have to watch The Believer with me.
Right, because his performance
Don't blink.
isn't the best that he's done in his career either. It's a
good.
very good one.
He's young.
But I think honestly what he did in a lot of the other movies we've already discussed, even Lars and the Real Girl, Half Nelson, these movies, it's like a I don't know, better, or maybe it's just because it's a more approachable performance. But I mean, he really does a great job here, and that is the first movie that he's truly starring in, and he goes for it. But I do understand, man. I don't think I've ever seen The Believer, and I don't think I really have any interest in watching it based off of what you're saying. For me, it's kind of in the same wheelhouse in the sense of I think he does a great job.
I know where you're going with this.
I really like parts of it. It's Blue Valentine. I love Blue Valentine.
I'm embarrassed to tell you that I've still never watched it.
And it's because of the reason why that this is my worst on approachability. If you go Michelle Williams, you go Ryan Gosling, you say 2010 or whatever, and it's a phenomenal movie. They should both be nominated. The story, maybe that should be, all the things about this are so good, but you have never watched it. And the reason why is because every time anyone tells you about this movie, they're like, this is the most depressing, saddest movie I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually curious to watch it because traditionally I love that kind of movie, as you know.
Yeah.
It's the difference in the two of us is I'm always like, Drew, you got to watch this movie. And you're like, the ending was so bleak and ambiguous. Why do you like it? And I was like, it's just real, man. It's how life is.
And you get to see him get older and balding, and he does it a good job, which I like because they go back and forth through time. You see him sing, you fall in love with them as a couple. I truly love Blue Valentine, but if I'm talking about movies that I really enjoy that I don't want to watch again, this is definitely up there. Like, I would rather watch Murder by Numbers or Stay than I would watch Blue Valentine if it was like I'd already seen every single one of them once this year.
Yeah.
I'd pick the other two over Blue Valentine.
Requiem for a Dream, Blue Valentine. Which is harder? Which is less approachable for you as a viewer?
Oh man, I think Blue Valentine is less approachable because I don't struggle with heroin addiction.
Yeah.
But like I've had my heart broken before, and I've been in love and fallen out of love, and like because literally all it is watching a couple that you adore fall in love and then fall out of love.
Yeah.
That's as simple as it is. And then you add in a kid, and you add in marriage, you add in years. Like,
Is this how you wanted to grow up?
I don't want her to grow up in a home where her parents treat each other like this. Don't.
I'm sorry.
it's just heartbreaking. You know, like I don't want to watch that movie.
Maybe I'll watch that one tonight.
You should. I'll watch it with you.
Yeah.
All right, so the last one, if you guys have been paying attention, the category is visibility. What is the most visible movie that Ryan Gosling has ever done? I'm going to go with one that you picked earlier, is La La Land. It
It almost
just
won Best Picture. It did
Right?
for about 18 seconds.
She gets nominated, she wins. It wins Best Picture for 10 seconds, 18 seconds, whatever it is. Everyone talks about it. People that love musicals talk about it, whether they liked it or they love talking about how bad it is musically because of how they dance or how they sing. Whatever it was, for an entire year, this movie was talked about by everybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like since The Notebook, because that was so long ago now, it was 17 years ago now, it does for me feel like La La Land is the most visible thing that he's done in his career.
I mean, there is the component of this, which is that musicals are timeless. But I don't think the songs in La La Land are timeless in the way that songs from classic musicals are. That's one thing that I
Okay.
think I've noticed about this movie is the most famous song from this movie, I guess, is City of Stars. And I don't think City of Stars comes up very often. Like, I don't hear people sing it or talk about how much they love it.
How weird would that be?
Yeah.
If you were just like walking around, someone's like, City of Stars.
Right.
You're like, really?
So it's a very unique...
Whereas like Star is Born, like, it was okay to sing.
Shallow?
It was,
like
everyone
a
was singing
giant
Shallow.
Yeah, so I think that that's really interesting. But I do agree that, like, the prestige of Emma Stone getting her Oscar, the prestige of this winning Best Picture, even if it didn't actually win, but it kind of did, and it almost in some people's minds feels like... I think some people's minds, they're, like, split on whether or not that should have happened, because they split
Right.
director-movie, right?
Right,
Like,
right,
they don't
right.
do that often. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, my pick for this one is interesting, and it's funny. I'm going back on this because I've only realized in the years since. I think his most visible movie is actually The Notebook.
Really?
Yeah, and I do think Crazy Stupid Love I could go 3 for 3 here. I could see it happening. and there's-
That'd make for a really good show.
yeah, there's part of me that was like, because I'm going to kind of make a point that kind of speaks to both, but I think the difference there is that Crazy Stupid Love, even though it's not rated R, it's a little raunchy. Like,
Okay, yeah.
I don't think, when I have kids someday, like, I don't think I'm going to show my, like, 8-year-old daughter Crazy Stupid Love.
You would show them The Notebook before you showed them Crazy Stupid Love, you think?
The Notebook feels so much more like classic romance. You have older characters that are relatable, I think. There's like just themes in The Notebook that are sad and difficult to deal with, but I also feel like it's so much more...
It's like more of a fairy tale
Yeah,
type thing.
you could see it as like a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old and like remember it very well. Whereas like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I really want my like 8-year-old daughter seeing like the girl do the like naked selfies for Steve Carell. Like that stuff just, it's a little
Right.
adult. And also like picking up women at a bar. There's some really dark stuff to the way they interact.
Yeah, it's stuff that also like you can't really truly appreciate, I think, until you're a little bit older. Whereas
yeah.
like The Notebook, even in high school for me, it was like, this is my life,
Again, it's exactly what he said to me when we first met.
Okay, so I like that. I like The Notebook. I think La La Land, I truly think at this point, it's probably those two. Like, realistically, I'm trying to think if there's any other movie in his career that, like, people talked about as much as those. Like, Blade Runner 2049 honestly feels like it kind of came and went.
Agreed.
And when you talk about Drive, Not a lot of people talked about Drive.
How about First Man?
First Man.
We talk about that film weekly.
I haven't even seen First Man,
Yeah,
and I love Gosling. You said it was all right.
It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because it's like a big Oscar movie. It was like the Damien Chazelle follow-up to La La Land.
Right.
It like
With Gosling,
should have
yeah.
been like, you know, on some level it should have been. It had as much potential or promise as Blade Runner had. Like it was a big deal. That movie, you want to talk about a movie that came and went? Like that is just a shockingly dead movie.
Do you think that Ad Astra,
yeah.
Does it have anything to do with that? Did it feel like they got lost in each other? Because I don't feel like either people, like anyone really talked about either of those.
They're like similarly bleak. What I think is funny about those movies is that one of them is a biopic and the other one is just like a pretty cool, but it's James Gray, so like he makes movies like that. But like they both have a very similar tone. I just think that neither movie feels exciting. They both feel like extremely slow and cerebral. And that's just not the kind of movie that lives on, you know, beyond Ryan Gosling parties. Yeah.
Right. All those that you've been going to. Yeah. So the worst visibility wise for me, and this is an interesting category, right? Because like that could just be like the one you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Right. But I think in order for it to actually be taken into consideration for this, and we're actually going to talk a little bit more about another final deciding topic that we have, is the fact that like this movie that we're going to discuss, or these movies that we'll discuss in the visibility category that fall into the worst, are movies that you should have cared about, but you didn't pay attention to. I think that's maybe like the biggest part about it. And for me, it's Gangster Squad. Like you look at that cast, you look at the amount of talent in there. You see Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone together again. Josh Brolin's in there. Sean Penn is in there. There's so much talent in this. Anthony Mackie is in there. That movie, no one talked about.
We both watched it getting ready for this show because we wanted to understand it. Because I think we looked at his filmography and it was like, okay, there's a few movies on here that I think are bad. And like, yeah, every actor has their bad movies. But when this movie came out, he was famous. He was very famous. Like,
they all were having like pretty big moments in their careers.
Oh my goodness.
And Sean Penn is kind of like eternally faithful, it feels like, still. Like maybe now he's fallen off a little bit, but at that time he was not.
You can even see at the beginning of this movie when he's like boxing, you can see he's in the gunman shape. You can see how jacked he is.
Insanely shredded.
Yeah. And like he doesn't get to show it off in the movie really. He's like mostly just covered in like pinstripe suits.
And like the weird makeup
over
his eye and stuff. Yeah.
But like you can tell, and like the cast in this movie is actually insane.
It's stacked.
I can't believe that this movie is as irrelevant as it is, and it's only been 7 years. You talk about it in another 15 or 20.
No one will talk about it.
It just doesn't exist.
It'll be the one Ryan Gosling Emma Stone movie that no one cares about.
That's like literally the reason people will remember is they were in 3 movies, and like 2 of them are classics.
Otherwise, you'll just forget Gangster Squad exists because you didn't watch it, and if you did watch it, you forgot about it. You never want to watch it again. And no one has ever gone out of their way to talk to you about it.
And the whole point of this category, which is like visibility, is that like this movie is not visible. No one has seen it. Like you don't talk to people and they're like, oh, but the underrated movie in Gosling's career,
it's Gangster Squad.
It's Gangster Squad.
Get out of this Ryan Gosling party, you heathen.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience to watch. My vote for this one for the least visible movie in Gosling's career. It's only a few years earlier, and this movie blew my mind when I watched it. It's The Ides of March.
Okay, so Gosling is like pretty famous when this comes out. Clooney is still the George Clooney at this point.
This is the moment. This is the like post up in the air Michael Clayton Descendants Clooney.
Yeah.
It's right at the end before he starts to kind of get into the older category. And Gosling is right around Crazy Stupid Love, Drive. He's in that range. So like, add to that the fact that you've got Philip Seymour Hoffman, Paul Giamatti, Evan Rachel Wood. You've got like, there's like at least 2 other significant actors, and Clooney directs this movie, which is probably why it's not good.
That's fair.
But like, it's literally, if you sold me this movie,
I've watched this movie and I remember nothing about it. Nothing.
Like, this is exactly the kind of movie where I would be like, I would die to watch this. Like, I love this cast. I love this political espionage premise. Like, this is so up my alley. And, like, you want to talk about a movie with a cast that doesn't exist. This movie may as well not exist.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been, I think 10 years since this movie came out. And it honestly still feels like it's like a joke, like an SNL movie they came up with.
Yeah, I mean, I it's like a political. It's not even like a thriller, right? It's like a political drama.
It's like a political drama. Yeah.
Yeah, those are always really riveting.
Yeah. I mean, but in theory, there's a version of this movie that could have been like a Best Picture contender.
And also, like, the idea of Gosling and Clooney being on screen together sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That's probably exactly what the producers thought.
100%. So I couldn't believe it when I thought back about this movie and the moment that it happened and how much of a miss it was. The expectation there, it blew my mind.
That's crazy because honestly, this filmography, all the movies that we've talked about so far have actually all been pretty well reviewed, like every single one in these categories. So I think the last thing that we do before we actually decide what the best or the worst is to remember that like not every single one of these movies qualifies the same, which is kind of the conversation that we just had with Visibility. You know, like remember the Titans is a classic movie, but it doesn't really feel like a Gosling movie.
Yeah, he's in it, it's on the list.
Yeah,
but like, it's not the best. If somebody's like, that's the best Ryan Gosling movie, it's like,
really?
Like, is Alan Bosley the reason you love Ryan Gosling? Really?
Yeah, like there's no way. And then you mentioned a little bit ago, you know, Song to Song. It's Terrence Malick. It's one of those types of movies. It had Fassbender in there as well.
Kate Blanchett, Natalie Portman. It's a big movie, but like that's not gonna make the best.
No, it's like don't know if anyone's really ever talked to me about Song by Song, and I talked to a lot of people about a lot of movies. The last thing that we need to discuss here that really is going to come into play when we decide the best and the worst is expectation versus execution, right? Did this movie deliver what it promised? And I think that's the last thing. So once again, I'm going to say this down in the comments. Let us know what's the best and what's the worst. Now you know you've heard our whole talk through of approachability, visibility, and and rewatchability. And now we have expectation versus execution. So let us know down below if you pick exactly the two movies that we choose. We're going to shout you out next week on the episode, which is going to be the best and the worst martial arts film.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm really excited about that. We'll talk to you guys about why we're going to be coming to that, what anniversary it was that inspired that thought. But the last thing here, as we just said, it's execution versus expectation. What is the best Ryan Gosling movie based off of the conversation that we've had back and forth, who's agreed with whoever, who's been like, I don't know, I actually think that Blue Valentine's better. What do you think it actually is?
I think the number one of those three categories we talked about that stands out to me above all else, I think it's actually rewatchability is the most important. It's the one that feels like when you talk about the best of anything, you know, because on that scale, when I think about my 10 favorite movies, they're all movies that if I watch 30 minutes tonight and pass out on the couch, I will want to pick up at minute 31 tomorrow. Like, I have a hard time with, like, you know, if I want to watch it. And so there's not that many in his career that I feel that way about because they're not that digestible, some of them. So for me, I just think it has to be Crazy Stupid Love.
I think you're right. I think that Crazy Stupid Love is just the best Gosling movie. And it's interesting because it's not his movie. It's really more Steve Carell's movie than it's his. He's just such an integral part in it. Like, it's like one of those movies when you watch like the superhero movie, but you're like, I like the sidekick more. Yeah. And Gosling is kind of that guy. He adds so much levity to the movie. He's got great timing. He adds the sex appeal. And like, I think about, you know, when we were trying to break this down, I was thinking about, well, which of these movies that we've discussed in this entire list have I actually watched recently? It is only Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah. The closest ones on the list are really good. Like, there's an argument I think you can make for Nice Guys because I think
so.
Really
I think that's the solid number 2.
Yeah, but I think that the thing we talked about, which is just like, do all people like it? You know, is it approachable and like believe? Because the funny thing is about Gosling in this movie is like that scene when he meets Emma Stone at the bar, and he walks up and he says that line to her about like you're doing that dress a favor. He's such a d-bag, but he's likable. Like, and some guys watch that and they go, I want to be that. And women watch that and go, I want to meet that guy. Because there's something that's dangerous, but like not actually dangerous about him. You can almost tell that he's like...
Exactly. He like he does a good job of putting on a front, but you're like, there's more to this guy. Like, he's just doing this because it worked. And then, like, you know, he does the whole dirty dancing thing because he knows it works. But it does feel like there's more to him in that movie. And then you talk about everything else about it. It's really funny. Yeah. Steve Carell's at the height of his career. Who doesn't love Julianne Moore? Who doesn't love Kevin Bacon? It's Emma Stone and Gosling together for the very first time. Or this... Yeah, right? That's the first time.
Gosling and Stone? It's the first one. Yeah,
it's the first one because Gangster Squad's second and then La La Land. It's crazy because I don't actually think at the start of this episode I would have thought it was going to be Crazy Stupid Love. I actually thought Drive would have maybe done better.
I can't believe it didn't make a single one of our categories.
I know.
Like
I love Drive.
Like, this episode is inspired by the anniversary of one of our favorite movies, and it like didn't come up.
Yeah. I mean, it came up in the beginning.
Yeah.
We did it some service. So yeah, Crazy Stupid Love is the best Ryan Gosling film, according to myself and you. The worst, and this is where I think expectation versus execution really came through.
Yeah.
And, you know, unless I'm wrong, I'm just going to kind of take this one based off of what you said and the fact that we both watched it preparing for the show. It's just got to be Gangster Squad.
And it's like tough to say that out loud because like there are movies he's done
that are worse.
You know, like we talked about Stay. There's like the United States of Leland. There's movies in his career that are like Murder by Numbers, that are trashy movies. But who expected Stay or Murder by Numbers or United States of Leland to like be a big deal? Like we could be talking about Gangster Squad today as a big deal. This movie should have mattered.
It could have been the coolest thing. It could have been the best depiction of Mickey Cohen ever. It could have been that gangster movie that you wanted out of Josh Brolin. It's kind of like almost trying to be a buddy cop movie when you have all of them together. Like, you know, Giovanni Ribisi's kind of like the squirrely nice guy. Like, they even have that whole like getting the gang together thing like they do in MacGruber.
Yeah.
Where they just like go to these one place after the other.
Yeah.
And they have like these funny one-liners. But like in general, this movie was like, the story was lost. You know, like Mickey Cohen was just like Sean Penn acting a lot. Like it was just him like, I'm going to act in this scene. Like they didn't really have any substance to it. And then the plot was really hard to kind of attach to. It just felt like it was all style and no substance.
I mean, the whole plot of the movie is there's a badass gangster and we're going to take our badges off and kill people. Shootouts ensue, end movie.
Like, and then like the nice guy who's like, what makes us different from them is like the only guy that dies or something, or one of the only, like the whole thing about it is just like, it's so cliche, it's so by the numbers, it's so forgettable. I watched it last night and I'm like, what was my favorite moment? I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that the key is just you mentioned it. It's execution versus expectation, and that's where this movie falls so short. Because there are certainly movies that I think are technically worse, but they don't have the kind of star power and the kind of pressure that this movie had.
Yeah.
And you know, it happens all the time. But if you're gonna talk about his best and his worst, Ryan Gosling's best movie is Crazy Stupid Love. His worst movie is Gangster Squad.
So that is it for the best and the worst of Gosling. And before we get out of here, the last thing that we want to do is to kind of talk about what is next for Ryan Gosling. Where should this dude go from here? He's 40 years old now. You know, he still looks phenomenal. He's still top of his game. It feels like he could still be in an Oscar-winning performance or movie or a massive ensemble cast tomorrow. It could be announced. What do you think he needs to do in his career to continue the longevity or continue the fact that like people like you and me are so excited to talk about him?
I mean, there's stuff, right? Like, I think the big difference between Gosling and most of his contemporaries is that he's never played a superhero. If you compare him to almost any one of those guys, it's the biggest difference. Chris Pine, Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth,
Gyllenhaal,
Ryan Gosling,
Fassbender.
Yeah, they've all done it. They've all shown up in one of these things, whether it's a hero or a villain. And he's very obviously chosen not to, because there's no way that him at his level...
Right, like Oscar Isaac, we talked about showing up in Drive, and then he even did it, right? If you guys have seen X-Men Apocalypse, you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing that he hasn't done, and I guess whether or not it's a good or a bad decision, it's what's left. That's a big one.
Do you think he'll win an Oscar? He feels like the type of guy that could win an honorary or like a Lifetime Achievement Award. I wonder if he'll actually ever win an Oscar, because like think about someone like McConaughey. What he had to do to win his was so different than anything he'd ever done before.
I think Gosling will. I think the reason is because the blue chip value of Ryan Gosling's name as a performer is so high now, and it has been for quite a while. And because of the choices that he's made, I think he's respected a little differently. Like, you take like Chris Pratt. Like, I don't think they're looked at as the same, even though they're bankable to studios in the same way.
Right, and Chris Pratt's movies have made exponentially more money than Gosling's.
He's worth more money.
Yeah.
But like they fill similar roles. I mean, we know that, you know, Gosling's in The Gray Man, the Russo brothers film coming out pretty soon, and he's going to continue to swing for the fences with his projects. The question is, like, we see actors do it all the time. They make a pivot somewhere in their career, whether it's the type or it's like they get to a certain age. that's probably when he wins. It feels like doing the Gosling thing he's been doing.
Yeah, I don't think he just continues to be like the quiet badass or the heartthrob or like the cheeky dude in a suit. I think unless it's like James Bond, but he's not going to be James Bond.
No.
So like, I think he does try to steer away from that. I don't think he wants to get pigeonholed in that for the next like handful of years while he still can looks wise.
Yeah.
Before he just becomes like out of the scene for a little while, then he just shows up as like a Timothy Chalamet's dad in something.
What about like the Denzel Bradley Cooper mold of like becoming a director? I mean, he did the one. He did the one movie. I think Lost River. It's called. It's panned critically.
Very bad.
People don't like it, but he still tried it, and it was a feature. And so he does strike me as the kind of actor that might be like, I'll step back and I'll work on direction more.
I don't think he should.
No?
I don't. I mean, based off of some of the things that I've heard about him on set, like not in a negative way, but I just don't know if he has that eye yet. Maybe in 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe when he's a little older, maybe when he matures a little bit more, that could be it. So, I don't know. You guys let us know. Let us know in the comments what you think Ryan Gosling should do next. Do you think that this is actually the correct best and the worst? I have a feeling we're going to make some Blade Runner 2049 fans pretty upset. I think some Nice Guys fans are going to be like, well, why didn't you guys just make that number one? But Crazy Stupid Love is the best, and Gangster Squad is going to be the worst. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us for our very first episode of The Best and the Worst, focusing on Ryan Gosling. Make sure to leave us a review on iTunes. It's definitely going to help us out a lot. And, of course, support us on Patreon and YouTube. You can look us up as Action Industries. This is Ben Bateman. Once again, I am Andrew Ghai, and you can find us everywhere on the web under those names and, of course, by Action Industries. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
All right, a big time shout out to our generals in our Patreon. Patreon.com/Team Action is the best way to support us in what we're doing. And this is also a great place to get in on the conversation. Before we tape these episodes, we talk to our generals in the Action Army about their ideas of what makes a great martial artist, what makes a great Ryan Gosling film, and next week, what makes the best or the worst David Fincher film. And we'll start with Call Sign Kilmer, Quiz Show, Ripper, Demon King, Excalibur, Caddyshack, The Chosen One, Public Enemy #1, Kaiju, ACP, Freedom, Robin, Kimura, Moses, Galactus, Bartab, Party J, Congo, The Gray, Phantom, Deja Vu,
24601. Call sign # Ladies Night, Ladies Man, JFTB, Wonderland, Quinn, Brosnan, Desperado, Outback, Da Vinci, The Slap, Entrapment, Stamos, Dante's Peak, Director, Top Gun, and Gundam, plus all of our past generals. A big time salute to you guys, and thank you so much for supporting The Best and the Worst. See you guys next week.